There, they decided this couple's rehearsal dinner should just turn into an open invite affair, with tons flocking to the venue, swarming the entrance and the streets around it, apparently just hoping to catch a glimpse of Taylor. While I didn't see an official count released, the Huffington Post said there were thousands gathered there, with reports saying the police had to be called to the area because this was such a scene. And even when she attended the actual wedding, there were reports of crowds as well, with TMZ saying that because this was actually anticipated, Taylor's security actually worked with local police to shut down areas and organize fans in advance of the event, with fans also reportedly waiting outside for her for as long as 12 hours. And so with that, you've seen people just absolutely horrified by this behavior, saying among other things, it's just so disrespectful. A wedding is such an important day. People arguing that anyone who did this isn't a real fan as opposed to such a big threat to Taylor's own safety. People writing things like, even outside the psychological toll this is likely taking on Taylor, y'all are putting her life at risk. You realize how easy it is for a dangerous stalker or violent individual to be hiding in that crowd? And some just throwing it out there, if you're really that big of a fan of a musician, respect them enough to not disrupt their friend's wedding by stalking them en masse. Unhinged behavior. You know, people have also noted that Taylor has frequently written about how much she struggles with this aspect of fame, right? It's a prominent theme in her music, but because she has so many fans, so many of her fans still do this. And one of the wildest things is this isn't even the only crowd Taylor pulled this weekend, because even a fake Taylor Swift was drawing tons of people at malls in Los Angeles over the weekend. But here's what I'll say right now. One, I think it's important we don't paint all Swifties with the brush here. When you have the amount of fans that she has, even when only a small percentage go fucking cuckoo, that's still a lot of people. When you get a lot of people together and excited, sometimes logic and decency go out the window. But in no world is this fucking behavior okay. I now get the hype around Taylor Swift. Like, I've listened to her music, I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I went to her concert, immediately got it. She's absolutely fucking amazing. But all of that excitement doesn't turn her into a non-person. Like, just try to put yourself in her shoes. You just want to go to your friend's wedding, be supportive, share in that experience, but you have to worry just by being there, I might ruin everything. And not for the normal reasons like, oh my God, am I gonna say something super awkward? But for what follows you. That's gotta drag on you. But unfortunately, I think that for the people that really need to hear this is going to fall on deaf ears, and for everyone else, I'm just kind of preaching to the choir. And then we need to talk about the outrageous murder of 66-year-old Lori Ann Carlton. Right, Lori was a California fashion entrepreneur, a loving mother of 9 children, and notably for this story, a proud ally of the LGBTQ community. And one of the ways she expressed that was by hanging a rainbow pride flag outside of her Magpie clothing store in Cedar Green near Lake Arrowhead, with one of her kids saying that in the 2 years since the business opened, vandals had ripped down pride flags on several occasions, and adding that each time their mother would simply just replace them with bigger ones. But this latest time was different because a 27-year-old guy by the name of Travis Ikaguchi reportedly tore down the flag and hurled homophobic slurs her way. And so Carlton did what her family said she always did when hate reared its ugly head. She confronted the man directly. And that, according to police, is when he shot and killed her. With Travis then fleeing on foot, and when police found him a few miles away, he shot at them, they shot back, and he was killed. And now, to no one's surprise, we've learned that he had been posting anti-LGBTQ and anti-law enforcement content on Twitter and Gab for a long time. But still, the overwhelming reaction to this tragedy in the small town of Cedar Green is one of utter disbelief. Right, for Lori's family, friends, and community, her killing comes as a senseless, shocking act of brutality. But for LGBTQ advocates, as senseless and shocking as it is, Lori's killing adds to the growing pile of victims of anti-queer violence across the country this year. With some notable cases including O'Shea Sibley, the gay man in Brooklyn who was stabbed to death at a gas station seemingly for just dancing to Beyonce. 18-year-old trans man Jacob Williamson, who was killed in South Carolina after meeting up with a stranger that he met online. 24-year-old Akira Ross, who reportedly was shot at a Texas gas station in front of her girlfriend after the gunman yelled homophobic slurs. 3 trans women who were killed in separate incidents in Texas, Georgia, and Puerto Rico. And Colin Smith, a straight cis man who was killed defending his LGBTQ friend from homophobic harassment in Oregon. And with all of that, advocacy groups partly blaming this rise in the political climate in which over 500 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced to states during this year's legislative session alone. And then, you've probably been hearing me talk about these guys over the past few months, $1 million art investing without the $1 million price tag. And again, they are a fantastic sponsor of today's show, Masterworks. You know, Picasso, Banksy, Monet, that's not even half the iconic offerings they have. They've been doing this for years and the numbers don't lie. With over 790,000 members and almost $1 billion in assets under management, that's saying a lot about the confidence investors have in the company. And they've provided tens of millions in net returns paid to investors, and that's through inflation and interest rate drama. You know, I've made an account and started investing along with a couple hundred of you guys. And of course, with this, as with any investment, past performance isn't indicative of future results. And exited investments aren't representative of performance for artworks not yet sold. But results like 15 exits with each and everyone returning a profit to users with 17, 25, and just over a week ago, 77% net annualized returns. And Masterworks just launched their largest offering yet by one of the world's most popular artists, a $36 million Basquiat piece. And with that, here's the catch. As you can imagine, the shares for this kind of release could sell out very quickly. Offerings like these are limited, but you can get to the front of the line by going to masterworks.art/DeFranco. Skip the waitlist to gain access to the billionaire asset class at masterworks.art/DeFranco. And then, how often do you think airplanes in America almost crash into one another, right? Once a week, once a month, maybe a few times a year? Well, actually, according to a New York Times investigation, it happens a couple of times times a week and hundreds of times a year. And these mistakes reportedly are often caused by human error, with a major factor being overworked air traffic controllers stretched too thin in the midst of a staffing crisis. Right, and we've talked about these types of near misses before, like back in January with a Delta flight and an American Airlines flight taking off from JFK, with the air traffic controller having to frantically stop the Delta flight from taking off to prevent it from smashing into the American Airlines flight crossing the runway at the same time. There was also just last month a Southwest Airlines flight having to abort landing because another Delta flight was taking off from the same runway, that crash being avoided by mere seconds. And just a few weeks ago, an American airline pilot had to yank their plane up 700 feet to avoid a mid-air collision with a United flight. And according to the investigation, these are just a couple of the more than 46 commercial airline near-miss incidents in just the last month alone. And actually, according to a NASA database containing confidential safety reports filed by pilots and air traffic controllers, there have been around 300 accounts of commercial airline near collisions in the last 12 months that data was available, which notably is a number that has doubled over the last decade. Although it's unclear if this is due to worsening safety conditions or an increase in reporting. Also, you have FAA spokesperson Matthew Leonard presenting data showing that runway incursions, such as when planes get too close to each other at the airports, they happen nearly 25% more often now than a decade ago. Well, yeah, some of these incidents have grabbed headlines and attention recently. Many near misses just don't get shared publicly at all. Though at this point, I do want to make an important note that while near misses do seem to happen frequently, or at least more than I'm fucking comfortable with, actual crashes are still pretty rare. In fact, the last fatal crash involving a major US airline was back in 2009. So please, someone, anywhere, everyone, knock on wood, because we are living in the longest streak without a deadly crash in US aviation history. However, those in the industry are saying that there are growing holes within the system that are increasing the risk of a disaster. With one controller who just barely prevented a crash even asking in the report to the NASA database, is it going to take people dying for something to move forward? And there are several issues that those in the industry say is increasing risk, including a lack of collision warning systems in airports despite repeated recommendations from safety authorities. But definitely the big problem is how understaffed air traffic controllers are. In fact, only 3 of the 313 air traffic control facilities in the nation are fully staffed, with one controller in their safety report to the FAA saying, "The staffing shortage is beyond unsustainable. It has now moved into a phase of just plain dangerous. Controllers are making mistakes left and right. Fatigue is extreme. The margin for safety has eroded tenfold. Morale is rock bottom. I catch myself taking risks and shortcuts I normally would never take." And adding, "It is only a matter of time before something catastrophic happens." But also notably, the air traffic controlling staffing shortage isn't a secret. I mean, it dates all the way back to the Reagan administration in the 80s when thousands of controllers who were on strike were replaced. And since then, more and more controllers are retiring and leaving the industry. Then you throw in that fun little pandemic we all lived through, and the shortage became a crisis. And so now you have many controllers working 6 days a week, and some having even clocked more than 400 hours of overtime since the beginning of the year. And the schedule that many of these workers are expected to maintain is so bad they even nicknamed it the Rattler, after the fucking snake. Now, the schedule was approved by their union. It's meant to spread busy shifts across employees, but it is a crazy schedule, and then you couple it with mandatory overtime, it's pushing many air traffic controllers beyond their physical and mental limits, with some even reportedly skipping medical care out of fear of losing their clearance to work. Meanwhile, others have taken to self-medicating with sleeping pills or alcohol, and this has led to mistakes with potentially disastrous consequences. Now, the FAA is working to address the staffing shortage. In their latest budget request, they sought more than $117 million to train and hire more than 1,800 new controllers. However, they're also expected to lose around 1,400 due to retirement and other departures in the next year, and the new controllers take years to fully train. So there's no reason to think we won't continue to see these near misses occur regularly. Or fingers crossed it doesn't happen, something even worse. But for now, federal officials have opened investigations into many of these incidents in an effort to improve safety and restore public confidence. And Jennifer Homendy, chairwoman of the National Transportation Safety Board, saying in a March safety summit, "The absence of a fatality or an accident doesn't mean the presence of safety. These recent incidents must serve as a wake-up call for every single one of us before something more catastrophic occurs, before lives are lost." And Leonard, the FAA spokesperson, saying their goal is to reduce the number of near misses to 0, and saying in a statement, "One close call is one too many." But in the meantime, we'll have to wait and see, and I guess enjoy all your trips now that I dumped all this baggage into your brains. You'll be fine. Probably. And then we need to talk about this problem with weed, which I know for people that know me is a very surprising sentence to be coming out of my face, because I've advocated for this stuff to be legal since before even most people were okay with it. But as you're gonna see, weed has changed a lot over the years and developed some risks that I think are worth talking about, especially if you're generally friendly toward it like myself. You know, over the past decade, recreational marijuana use has exploded as 23 states and DC have legalized it, and that translating into both big profits for producers and more frequent use by consumers, especially young people. I mean, in a survey last year, nearly 43% of those aged between 19 and 30 said they used marijuana in the past 12 months, up from 29% in 2011. And notably, more than 1 in 10 being daily consumers, meaning they used marijuana 20 times or more in the past month. Though data suggests drug usage leveled off and possibly even decreased during the pandemic. But at the same time that weed is becoming more and more accepted and common, it's also becoming far more potent, and that has experts worried. Right, so let me explain. In 1980, the average concentration of THC in cannabis samples seized by the Drug Enforcement Administration was less than 1.5%. That then inched up to about 4% by 1995, and by 2017, it was 17%. And then you fast forward to now, and many varieties of cannabis flower are listed as having upwards of 30%